Welcome to the Plant a Trillion Trees podcast. I'm Eva Monheim.
And I'm Hal Rosner. We are both certified arborists through the International Society of Arboriculture. The purpose of our podcast is to encourage tree planting and proper tree care for our urban forests, which include neighborhoods, parks, and other open spaces.
We will also cover a myriad of tree topics, including the important role trees play in relationship to the climate crisis. Thank you for joining us. The Plant a Trillion Trees podcast is happy to announce that we have won 2 Garden Communicator International Silver Laurel Medal Awards for Best Podcast and Best Podcast Episode. We've also won a Garden Communicators International Gold Laurel Medal Award for a Best Podcast Episode. We'd like to thank Garden Communicators for their recognition.
Verdant Earth Educators provides dynamic in-person training and online learning opportunities for environmental and horticultural businesses. Owned by ISA certified arborists and former university faculty, the Verdant Earth Educator team provides consultations on tree care and recommends climate-resilient opportunities for your valued green spaces. Verdant Earth Educators is all about seeding knowledge for success. Find Verdant Earth Educators at verdanteartheducators.com.
Monheim Microphones designs and handcrafts top-tier studio microphones and preamps right here in the United States in Hollywood, California. Their incredible line of innovative microphones and designs are used around the world by everyone from podcasters to top-charting record producers and singers. Monheim Microphones, unparalleled excellence. MonheimMicrophones.com. This podcast is being recorded on September 20th, 2024. Carlos Alvarez has been a part of the PowerCorp Philly team since March 2015, when he started as a crew leader supporting a group of young people completing various environmental sustainability projects in the city of Philadelphia. Since then, he has held many roles, mainly focusing on developing the program's technical skills training. He enjoys working with program members on site and taking advantage of every learning opportunity that presents itself during the various projects they are assigned. Currently, Carlos is the Director of Social Enterprise Operations, overseeing the installment and operation of the Philadelphia Reforestation Hub, Urban Wood Sawmill, a private and nonprofit partnership with PPR, Philadelphia Parks and Recreation, and Cambium Carbon, designed to support the city's goal to lower wood waste, improve the tree canopy cover, and meet their workforce development goals. The Reforestation Hub provides advanced training for PowerCorp Philly members in Sawmill Operation and related fields in tree care. Carlos is working towards becoming a certified arborist and remaining an active member of the arboriculture community. Welcome to the Plant a Trillion Trees podcast, Carlos. We're delighted that you could be with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, so Carlos, just about a year ago, I had the pleasure of hearing you speak for the first time at the Morris Arboretum's Canopy Conference, and you gave a terrific overview of what your organization, PowerCorps, is doing. We want to hear all about that, but first we'd like to hear a little bit about you. Who are you? Where did you come from? Where did you grow up? And how did you find your way to PowerCorps and the current work that you're doing?
Yeah, so that's a long story. I'm going to try to give you a brief version of my entire journey.
Take your time. We've got plenty of time.
My life has been a very interesting kind of experience, and things have turned out the way they have, really with very little intention, to be honest with you. I'm originally from El Salvador. I was born there. And was raised as a child all the way until I turned 10 years old. At which point my parents, we all moved to the U.S. and we settled in New York. When people ask me where I'm from, to be honest with you, I say I'm from New York. That's where I spent the end of my childhood and adolescence and young adulthood. In my school, I went through the public school system in New York. And I feel like whenever I speak about who I am and where I'm from, the thing that represents me the most, I'd say, is, being from New York, from Jamaica, Queens specifically. So I like to say I'm from Jamaica, Queens, New York. So there, like I said, I went through my elementary school, high school. And after high school, I was dealing with, plenty of stuff a young person goes through. And I felt the need that I had to start working immediately. So college wasn't necessarily a thing for me at that point. Yeah, I got into the trades. I did a variety of different things, construction, carpentry. I got some electrical, some welding. I got a commercial driver's license because I thought at some point I was like, maybe I want to drive across the country. That didn't turn out to be the case. But I did obtain a commercial driver's license. Then I was like, maybe I want to be a mechanic. I got really into cars. I don't know if you've heard about like the whole Fast and Furious, like the movies. I was there when they showed the first one. At the movies, we all had our little race cars, and we were super excited to see our little hooties in the movie, that was like the big deal about those movies. I was like, maybe I want to be a mechanic and do this for a living. So I got a certification in that in the city of Manhattan, and I also it turned out that that's not something that I wanted to do for a living. So it's another certification that I obtained, but I didn't necessarily pursue it as a career. And if you ask me, would you ever leave New York? I would have immediately denied it. Like, absolutely not. I'm from New York. This is where I'm from. This is where all my friends and family are. And then it just happened. It wasn't intentional. I ended up leaving New York to Reading, Pennsylvania. My mom was tired of struggling in New York. She wanted her own space, and the monthly keeping up with the rent and the New York hustle she was just done with it. So she first left New York, and a friend brought her out to Reading, and she was like, this seems nice. There's a lot of space. The houses are affordable. So she went in and bought a house in Reading. I was like, good for you, Mom. I'm glad you're happy. I'm staying here. So it wasn't immediately. I was like, I'm glad that you're happy in Pennsylvania. I'm a New Yorker. But, again, I ended up moving to Reading. Got a job there. Got actually a pretty good job that kept me in Reading for a while since it was affordable and I was getting paid well. I started to kind of like do a little more, like travel a little bit with the time and the additional funds that I was making at the time. So I stayed in Reading for a little bit. And that's when I met my wife. She's also from New York. I didn't know that, but we shared friends. And there was a whitewater rafting trip that a friend of mine had mentioned that if I wanted to go, he actually went to Temple here in Philadelphia. And through the Temple community that he had, I got into this whole whitewater rafting thing, which I thought was exciting. To me, I've always been an outdoors person. Trees and rivers and that kind of stuff is, you mentioned there's a trip, there's camping, anything like that. I don't care who's going, I'm there, right? So of course I was like, I signed up, and my wife was a part of that group that we all kind of like, we took a weekend out in West Virginia, but we met here in Jersey as a group. And then we drove down there. That's when I first met her. And I mentioned this, of course, she's a very important part of my life. But at that time, when we were getting serious and I was living in Reading, it was around 2008 when the economy was kind of like taking a hit. And I was looking at a kind of like a crossroads in my life. I was getting pulled back to New York by the electricians union. I was also the linemen's union in Reading was trying to keep me there. So I had an opportunity with them going back to New York. And then my then girlfriend had landed an opportunity in Philadelphia, which she went to Penn here, but she had moved back home. She was kind of like just fresh out of college. And so I was looking at these, the three options. What am I, am I going back to New York? Am I going to stay here and become a lineman? I joined the lineman's union, or do I move to Philadelphia? A friend of mine was already here, the friend that I mentioned. And of course, I moved to Philly and I went back to school. It had been easily over 10 years after my high school experience, and I'd just been out there in the trades where I learned so many different skills, right? But I guess I was ready for school. So I went to CCP here. I did my 2 years, keeping like jobs here and there, but I took classes at night. And yeah, I finished my associates and with a certificate in youth work. I was trying to figure myself out. Like I want to teach. I want to engage young people. I want to teach. I was really loving going back to my math thing, which I enjoyed math. And I thought maybe I want to be a math teacher. That didn't work out. So an advisor mentioned, maybe you should, you want to teach, you don't want to be a teacher. Maybe you should try social work and youth work. So I ended up following that pathway. It made sense for me. I felt comfortable there. And so I finished my associates at CCP and transferred to Temple. And at Temple, I finished my bachelor's in social work. and just hit the ground running in this field. So I did a year immediately out of college in providing support for folks recovering from drug and alcohol addictions and at the Northeast Treatment Centers, is what they're called. I did a year there. It was intense. I learned a lot, how to engage with folks, how to lead, like sessions, like group sessions and that kind of stuff. After a year, I was like, this isn't necessarily where I want to be. There was like a greater need for me to actually engage with young people who went through the different things, the stuff that I went through growing up. And PowerCorps just popped up. And it was like, it didn't, what it is now, I had no idea that's what I was getting into. And happy that it turned out to be this. But it was like the perfect combination of my appreciation for the outdoors, being a tree person, using my hands and working directly with young people who are going, through the things that I had to like learn the hard way, how to move around in the spaces that I was when I was coming up. So, yeah.
It sounds like you had a fortuitous way to find where you needed to go. And you gained a lot of skills along the way, which I believe is something that you never know what and how those skills are going to be used down the line, especially when you're working with young people. It really goes to show what kind of tenacity that you have in your job appreciation.
New York hustle, I think he would call it.
Yeah, the New York hustle.
Yes.
And I like the fact that you kind of came and you were actually thinking about which one should I take? There's 3 opportunities in front of me. And you picked one that led you here to Philadelphia. And we're really lucky that you came here because Hal and I had Theo Hooker on our podcast earlier, Cambium Carbon, which we're going to get into. But that, yes, I think, really opened up a lot of doors for a lot of people. I think I'll let you tell a story about the sawmill.
Sure thing, yeah. Sawmill has been another one of those things that just kind of like we grew into, luckily, as we expand the program. When I started PowerCorps, I was a year and a half old. We do 2 cohorts a year, and it's been running for over 10 years now. So when I started, PowerCorps was beginning their cohort 4, right? This was in March 2015. They brought me on the team as another crew leader as they were expanding. They were building out their capacity, and I think I was the 6th crew leader, which is it's a lot to run. Wow. 6 crews. It was doing well. It was getting a lot of attention, and it was received well by the young people. So they were all just like, without any actual promotion or like recruitment, the recruitment partners and the word of mouth mainly of the young people that were going through that program were keeping this like 5-6 crews actively participating twice a year. So I came in as a crew leader, and it was exciting to be in a space that had everything that I was looking for. Very challenging. There was like a lot that I needed to learn on how to engage young people. I had like personal experience, a passion for it, a little bit of training, but of course, nothing is like being in it. And it takes a few cohorts before you can really feel comfortable and make a greater impact in the lives of the young people that you engage, right? So yeah, I did 2 cohorts as a crew leader. They assigned me a group of 12 or so young folks between the ages of 18 and at that time was 24 was the limit that PowerCorps set for the young people that they recruited. And it was exciting. They would assign me projects all over the city and environmental sustainability. This is all connected with the water department and Parks and Rec and other folks in the city doing, just outdoor environmental stuff, maintaining farms, planting trees. Of course, that's like the number one thing that PowerCorps does is train young people on the proper ways to plant and care for trees. This whole tree care, the arborist world has been through PowerCorps. I didn't have like a formal training in how to do any kind of tree work before this, other than just, being a big old fan of being out and, next to a tree, climbing trees, being in the woods, really learning about trees. It's all been through PowerCorps. I got my tree tender certification almost immediately as a part of the program. That's just a requirement. In Philadelphia, I think any person working with trees, you just have to have your tree tender certification.
Well said.
Well said. We both know the program well.
Yes. And, it was great to meet those folks and kind of like get into the network. And I'm still kind of like building that out. I'm not like the best at it. Being honest, I'm a very kind of like I focus on my hands-on stuff, and I'm still working on expanding my network, right? And staying in touch, which is not an easy thing for me, at least. But so when I came in, PowerCorps was just starting, like I said, and we were doing a lot of invasive removal. just saving the trees that are already established and protecting the trees that we just recently planted. So the PowerCorp will plant over 1,000 trees every cohort. And once you plant the trees, there are our babies for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
So in all these different areas all over the city, we're planting new trees, and then we're also going back a lot of times to water them, to prune, and to clean up, to remove invasives, to make sure that they establish in the new homes, right? And that was a big part of PowerCorp. And it's the most exciting thing for members, like we could tell, is that they love it when we plant trees. It's a immediately gratifying kind of like activity, right?
Right on. Yeah, that's great.
It's nurturing. And I think that's very telling with the people that you're working with. I think a lot of young people need the hands-on aspect of education. They need that group think, the idea of doing something larger than themselves, something important for community, and something that they can look back on and say, I was part of that and I helped establish those trees. And, they can take their kids back later on 10 years from now and say, hey, mom and dad planted these trees when we were in PowerCorp. That kind of feeling makes you really feel good.
Yep. Absolutely. Everything you just said, whenever we're having those conversations with the members, we bring this up. It's like, this is something that you can come back to, you can bring your kids to. And a lot of them did and still do it. They'll name their tree that, it's like a special moment for some of them. It's like very special, right? To be able to say, I planted that tree. And they really, you can tell like when they make their watering, they'll make it into like a heart shape, put little like decorative stones around it. Some of them,
that's awesome. Great.
Wow.
How old are the children that you work with?
Well, they're not children. They're all adults. They're all between the ages of 18 and now 30 years old. We've expanded that age range from 24 to 30 now. PowerCorp has learned that young folks up to 30 are still needing support.
That's great.
And we've made the changes along the way. We listen to the young folks that we work with, and the program has grown because of the fact that we are like genuinely engaging with young people and we're trying to figure out what is it that they need to be successful. Such as like a member at one point, this is a very critical point, is why do I have to be in a bad situation or in trouble to have access to this opportunity, right? That impacted the program in many ways. Why is the gap 24? Why is that limit there? What happens if I just now turned 25? Those questions coming directly from the young folks that we work with have made changes in the program. Right. As we go, and it's been 10 years, and this is just the way it's done. You continue to engage with young people at that level so that the program is relevant, so the program is responding to their needs. And our thing is, the biggest thing is like removing barriers, right? Ultimately, what are we trying to accomplish here? Is like to provide a genuine, real space where people can come to and be themselves and open up and drop their guard so that we can then begin working and they can, be receptive to the exposure that we want to like put in front of them, right? Specifically environmental sustainability, of course. But, throughout their cohort, they wouldn't usually be in, in Philly. That's a challenge with the young folks, that they tend to kind of like stay in their own neighborhoods, and it's not easy for them to go to another neighborhood. So in PowerCorp, they're planting trees like across the city from where they live, or doing like maintenance and stormwater management systems with the water department all over the city, right? Sometimes in their own communities, they're maintaining those systems that were installed on the corner of their block. They're now removing weeds from the trees from a stormwater management practice, like a bump out, like a small little rain garden that was installed by the water department on their block. They're going back to it and doing some maintenance on those sites. So it takes it to another level, like the importance of like the connection of the service that they're doing in their own community. And then it begins to understand, why are these systems being placed here? Why is this tree is important here? Why is this system installed here, right? As far as like the stormwater management aspect of things. And this is how we engage with young people, right? In every area that you can think of.
I think, when you're talking about that, we don't realize that a lot of times some children and adults never leave their neighborhood, and they don't go far from their neighborhood. And when they go out of their neighborhood to see or do something with PowerCorp, they actually see the connectivity between the communities and what one community has and the other one doesn't, or both communities have and maybe the other one needs something. They get a chance to see all that and realize that each community is very different because of the location of it. Maybe because it floods a lot, or there's not enough water because it's located higher in the elevation in the city. And I think all those things come into account when you're working with people in general. They get a chance to see the larger picture.
Yes. I know you asked about the Reforestation Hub. So the point that I was trying to make, it's the Reforestation Hub, when I started, was not even a concept. It was so far from even imagining that PowerCorp would be doing this, right? When I started, we were using loppers and shears and hand pruners to take care of the trees that we just planted, shovels and, pickaxes, like your basic tools, and working closely with the folks doing this work. So coming from the industry, from the trades, I started to wonder what kind of, not just myself, but the members as well, what kind of jobs can we get using these pruners and these loppers? And how come, and members are asking questions, how come everywhere we go, there's no one else doing this work? It's just us. So what kind of real employment are we training for here? Legitimate questions, right?
Yes.
And so us here, as the staff, the mentors, and as we work with young people, of course, it makes complete sense. And from my experience of like every job that I went to, there were a specific set of tools that I needed to perform, the duties of my job, my work. And so we began to look deeper into that. All right, we're going to have to step this up. We're trying to make kind of like catapult people into this arborist, green jobs, environmental sustainability stuff. They need the proper tools. They need to know the next level stuff. And we're also aiming for quality employment, right? Jobs that are going to pay you better than your job at your local, fast food restaurant, whatever. So yeah, we started upping the level of training, the tools that we use. We also broke the program into like different phases, right? Being honest, at one point when I took over the training, I thought that I could train 60, 70 PowerCorp members on like advanced like operation of tools. And it was very hard for me. And I realized that not everybody wants to do this. This is a lot. This is not even safe. So yeah, we've grown and we broke it down into different phases. Like I said, the first phase of PowerCorp is the foundations. There's a lot of exposure, a lot of mentoring and coaching and removing those barriers, right? Teamwork, time management, work-ready basics, right? And foundations, and heavy on exposure and like mentoring. That's the big thing. Working with yourself to be able to receive all of this that's coming at you. And members are dealing with a lot. Our members are dealing with a lot when they come in through our doors. So foundations is the first phase. The second phase, we created these industry academies. So, if you bear with me, I'm getting to this Sawmill. The industry academies provided an opportunity for members that have successfully completed their foundations phase, right? They met the basic requirements to be employable. They then have an opportunity to take a deeper dive into a specific area that they choose. The first one, of course, was like the GSI fellowship that we call. It's one of our industry academies. It's where members work in a smaller team doing strictly stormwater management in partnership with the water department, right? And that's been with PowerCorp since day one. The other one is we created an urban forestry fellowship. That one was a response to the need of the city, the Parks and Rec specifically, and their tree crews to just like additional support in their tree maintenance operations. We plant trees and help in limbing and pruning trees, and there's an interest and opportunities for employment in that area. So then we created the Urban Forestry Fellowship. They receive chainsaw operation and maintenance safety training to the next level, right? They also operate a wood chipper. They move around on a truck and receive next level of training in a smaller group. And they work a lot alongside in support with Parks and Recs, like tree crews. So the tree crews, often they'll call us, can you send the urban forestry fellows to help us clear the right of way? You don't need like heavy duty equipment, but your chipper and your chainsaws will do great. So they're actively working on streets, clearing the right of way after storms, right? Working at that level provides a certain type of training that you just can't get.
Right, a skill set.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
it's real life. It's you're hands-on.
Yeah.
And so the Urban Forestry Fellows have been active. I don't know how many years now, but that fellowship has been happening, of course, twice a year, concurrently with foundations. There's other industry academy fellowships. Some are AmeriCorps, some are not. As other folks have been engaging with PowerCorps, there's a masonry fellowship working with the penitentiary, restoring the walls for historic preservation in partnership with a local Masons Union. Pullman is involved. And the idea is to bring partners that can also provide employment after the training, right? We also do solar installs, which is a little more advanced in the math and the technical aspect of it. And there's so many other opportunities. I be honest, I can't, recall all of them, but the fellowships are designed as like one step shy of being like work ready, right? Trained and work ready to enter these very specific fields.
What is the response of your members once they have these more technical trainings? How's their morale? How's their response to their work that they're doing? Do they feel empowered? Do they get certificates? How does all that work?
Yeah, so it varies. Of course, some of the members are sitting right where they want to be at the right time in their personal and professional development journey, because it's all about timing with young people. Plenty of young folks have come through the program for whatever reason have been dismissed. They come back a second term and sometimes even a third term before they are like, now I'm ready. And of course, when it comes to taking a second, third, or fourth chance, there's no stopping for us. As long as you're willing to come back and do the right thing again, the doors are always open. And it's been the case for a lot of members where they finally came back. They were in the right state of mind. They were ready for it. And now they're sitting in like a fellowship and they're just like so hungry for it and ready for it. They take advantage of it and they're loving it. And they're following through with the steps. There's an entire team of PowerCorps staff who are available to support them, making the connections, guiding their professional development, and like really trying to like help them figure themselves out on what is it that they're trying to accomplish here. So when they make it to one of our industry academies, for the most part, not always, for the most part, they are exactly where they want to be at that moment. So yes, they take advantage of it. Those that graduate those fellowships are usually hired by the water department, Parks and Rec, and other employers, partners that we have. Others, they're still kind of like not quite sure, like myself. Like I got certifications in a variety of different areas, and I ended up realizing, actually, this is not what I want to do. And then we would continue to engage with them to try to figure out, okay, well, let's see. As long as they're doing what they're supposed to be doing as far as like, meeting the benchmarks, the expectations from us and whoever a partner or employer that they've been with, we continue to engage and maybe try this and try that. So, it varies where they are. But yes, a lot of them are just moving along the pathway and, are in full-time civil servant positions with the city, for example. Like the water department has been a big partner with us. And they have entire crews that are made up of PowerCorps members.
Fantastic.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, PowerCorps got mentioned today, September 20th, in the Enquirer. Frank Kummer wrote a nice overview of the upcoming $12 million that's coming into the city and partnering with Philadelphia Parks and Rec.
Yes.
Pennsylvania Horticulture Society's Tree Tenders program will be a big partner. And it looks like PowerCorps is going to be supporting that as well. What kind of equipment are you using? Because it seems to me one fantastic green job will be state-of-the-art watering equipment. As we plant these thousands of trees, we sure as heck better be watering them well into the fall, which means nothing anymore. But, deep into September, October, it's bone dry out there.
Yeah. So I've been going on 3 years now, focused on the Reforestation Hub. So when I was active with PowerCorps, like the foundations cohorts, what we did was in partnership with the Fairmont Park Conservancy, they would load up a couple of water tanks on a trailer and we would pull up when we plant or when we go back and water. And we would literally just grab some buckets and use our buckets and go water those trees properly, nice and slow. Don't erode, around the root ball, all the proper, training with the guidance of experts, right?
Yeah.
And it was pretty basic, just, some buckets and enough people to carry those out there and hundreds and thousands of trees get watered.
Yeah.
As often as hopefully the weather, allows, definitely those heat waves are tough. But I know there's been interest in having crews that are actually designated to do watering, and other teams with PowerCorps are in conversations with PPR and other folks on the possibility of us establishing that. I have not been in those conversations as it is right now. We partner mainly with FPC, but any other partner that gets in, just spread some water directly on.
Yeah. It's amazing how much, if I was to go out and water trees on my street, I bet I could easily get 5 Home Depot 5-gallon buckets down there to those thirsty trees right now.
Give it a bucket.
I want to kind of pivot to the actual sawmill
Right.
to hear about that. And I like the fact that you built up
building us there.
You built us up to the planting, which eventually, when trees start to die, we need some place to put the wood. And Philadelphia's had a long history of dumping a lot of their trees in their dumps and not utilizing the wood for higher purposes. And when we heard that Cambium Carbon was involved in negotiations with the city of Philadelphia, we got really excited on our podcast to hear that they were going to be creating some type of milling process for wood in the city because, we have one of the largest city parks in the world. And I can't even imagine how many board feet would be coming out of there over time.
Yes, no, absolutely. So going back to the Urban Forestry Fellows, we would partner with Parks and Rec on, just on days that they would hire a sawyer to the organic recycling center, which is where the city dumps all its trees. And they would have a day that would mill all day, 2-3 days back to back. And we had the opportunity to be a part of that. We could not waste that opportunity. Like we get to see a mill here and we can then show the members. And so, we were a part of that and we milled. We raised beds. At one point, we made some tables. We also built some cubbies and stuff like that for rec centers. Small little projects here and there that we did with some of that lumber. And we got a taste of that. This is way before, talks about Reforestation Hub, a lumber yard at the Organic Recycling Center even was a thing. So eventually, the city ran a study. We clearly are making enough mulch and compost. There's plenty to go around. The wood chip, plenty to go around. And we need to be able to move this, kind of manage the what they would call wood waste in a more efficient way, I guess. And they needed to have more of a permanent, mill on site rather than just every now and then bringing a sawyer. So they began a study. And I'm going to summarize this. They ran a study, confirmed that it would be useful to have a mill on site. I was a part of a trip down to Baltimore. We saw some folks doing it down there as well. And then eventually, PowerCorp, Cambium Carbon put in a bid to get a contract to operate the city's first lumber yard, using a sawmill on site to turn some of the logs that come in there that still have value into a higher value product, right? Boards and
tree stakes.
Tree stakes,
yes. Yeah, tree stakes.
Or just in general, outdoor furniture. People just in its very basic form, tree stumps that people can use. So, and we're still exploring that area. I can get into that later. But that's how it became a thing. We got a few grants after we were awarded the contract, and we began to clear a little corner at the Organic Recycling Center. It's about an acre and a quarter or so right there on the east end. Yeah, and slowly, we got a pole barn installed. We got power to the building, and then we got the wood miser delivered, the LT40 electric, and we began diverting logs, and we are now officially milling logs, right?
When you went down to Baltimore, how did that change your view about having a permanent sawmill here in Philadelphia?
What I saw when I went down there, to be honest with you, I saw, I'm always I try to envision what is this going to look like if I'm engaging young people in training.
Right.
It's always the perspective or the lens that I always take with what I do here. And going down to Baltimore, there was I can see the work that they were doing. They were combining both reclaiming wood from deconstruction, and then they also had a setup like what we have here, like collecting city logs and taking them to wherever they dump their logs and having a person there milling the logs, right? So it's both. In both spaces, it was about, this is a space where we can take people and train them on how to do this and train people how to do deconstruction and even recycling bricks, for example, using, old bricks that still have, I guess, how they say they don't make them like they used to. Those bricks that still have life in them.
Yeah, sure.
So they collect bricks, old beams, the trusses from the homes that have been, and they had so much there. But in every space, there's people working, there's employment opportunities. And if we take the PowerCorp approach, there's mentorship. There's guidance and support in the process while you have, money in your pockets, right?
Sure.
It's training. And a lot of the times we forget that young people out here, especially in Philadelphia, they have an entire family to support outside of themselves. So it's like, yes, I want to receive the training. I want to learn how to do this, but I don't have the luxury of just like living on a small stipend to show up here every day. And the expectations are high for PowerCorp. Very demanding. And, that's not enough. That's not going to cut it. And you have to be ready to engage and to learn. And when you have that kind of expectation, you also have to provide that kind of support.
Right.
So yeah, seeing that, the workspaces and hearing the stories of people that are working down there, and also hearing some of them were very honest. And like, these are the areas where we're doing well. And these are the areas that we would like to see some changes. Plenty of times after like the tour, we'd sit down and have a sandwich. You know how it is. You have those genuine conversations and they open up and then tell you these are the things that we feel are lacking.
Well, one of the things that I think is really important is when you go on these tours, you find out what doesn't work and you don't replicate that in your location. And you also look to see what's really functioning very well and make sure that that's one of the key components of your operation. I think that that's critical for success for your PowerCorp members. And they feel empowered too, because you've already looked to find out what's not working and not bring it to Philadelphia. And I think that that's a critical part of touring other operations.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm actually just wanted to mention, there's a couple of other operations that are doing exactly what we're doing here at the Reforestation Hub that I can't wait to get out there and see how they, I just got to get the capacity and the opportunity in. And I will.
You mean other cities?
Other cities.
Who were they? Who are they, Carlos?
I mean, I don't exactly remember who they are, but I know it. Of course, California is doing it.
Yeah. Detroit.
Yep. And
Detroit's doing a lot of it.
There you go. I got to make the time to connect with the community and take a trip out there.
Well, I'm surprised Eva hasn't asked you about Urban Wood Network yet, because she's an enthusiastic booster.
Have you run across them at all?
Yes, I attended the last two conferences with the Partners in Community Forestry conference that we're actually attending this November.
I'll see you there in Chicago.
I'll have my trainees also in attendance, which is great.
Nice.
But yeah, the Urban Wood Network, I've been a part of those trainings is what they are. And
I'm glad.
I learned a lot about how to do, there's so much information that they shared. Even when I first started, kind of like, okay, how are we going to do this? These folks are already doing it. There's a toolkit. There's so many people that are willing to share resources.
Dynamic group.
Yeah. And yeah, it felt good to be in community with all these folks and that they're so excited to hear about the Reforestation Hub and let me know, here's my contact, you reach out, you let me know. And, it's just a matter of capacity, I guess. But, as it grows and we have more time to connect with more folks, of course, that's my goal. You have to.
I just quickly want to say the other resource that we have in Philly is we have big trees. I mean, the Midwest is still primarily going to be ash and Norway maple that are going to be maybe 24 inches in diameter. But I saw the wood at the ORC a couple of days ago when I met with you, Carlos. Yeah. And, there's substantial big oaks and London plane and things like that. So I see that as an advantage.
There's plenty of big size logs that we're actually... we don't even have the capacity, to be honest. There's been a couple of times that I rolled a log into the lumber yard. Yes, didn't have the capacity to lift it, and I'm gonna have to actually mill it with the Alaskan mill,
right,
to bring it down to size that I can actually put it on the mill itself. I have just way too big.
So the Alaskan mill, if I'm right, is the jig mounted to a chainsaw, right?
I'm just using the term that everybody assigned. I looked at it, I was like, just a bracket on a chainsaw, but it's the Alaskan mill, right? Sounds better. Yeah. When we first started, actually, we made our first stakes. Not all of them, but some of the first stakes that we made were made with boards that were cut with the Alaskan mill.
Okay.
The first mill that my trainee operated, that we operated, was the Alaskan mill. And I think we milled 6 foot elm because the stakes are, 6 foot. And we just made 1.5 inch boards out of that. And then we use a table saw to rip them at 1.5 inch. So that's 1.5 by 1.5 6-foot stakes. We put the tips on those stakes using a hand operated drill with the sharpener on the tip.
Okay. I always wondered about that.
That's how the first order was finished manually. Every single tip on the first, I think we made 1,000 stakes for PHS. It was like our first order. We made them very basic manually. Our team from Baltimore actually helped us. They cut most of them with their mill. And they sent it to us. And then the stakes that didn't actually make our little kind of vetting process to make sure that they were good. So we were short about over 100 or so stakes that we then actually made by hand with an Alaskan mill and a regular drill to put the tips on them. Yeah. Now we have a little pointer that we use. So we've grown. But that was the first order.
Well, somehow I think those tree stake orders are not going to go away. In fact, you better scale up because we're about to start planting.
And it's a great story because, right, these stakes are being made out of trees that fell in city streets that are then being used to plant new trees in the same spaces that the tree, was removed from. So it's like the cycle of these trees continues, right? It's just great. You have
absolutely,
ash or oak or whatever tree that fell on your street, and then you see PHS pull up and they're going to plant more trees. The stakes that they're using, at least for now, already are very likely stakes that were made here from a tree that fell right there on that same street.
So it's trees helping trees.
Yes. It's the same trees helping the new generation of trees. They are they're supporting the youngsters. The old trees are supporting the youngsters.
That's cool.
So, that's not going to go away. We're going to keep making stakes. We just, I'm already planning on getting a second pointer, and as we expand and we're able to hire more trainees on site and we build capacity, we'll be able to produce more. It has to be done, of course. Funding is a big thing, and then also being able to provide a training space. We're not here to like produce large quantities of anything. We're here to create a space for training.
And you had mentioned along with training, Carlos, the expectations are high, and that made me think of safety because it's chainsaws and sawmills and your Bobcat skid steer. There's a lot that goes into the safety aspect of working around machines and sharp things.
Absolutely, yeah. Very critical. To give you an example of how, like, our first trainee went through the Urban Forestry Fellowship. He got into chainsaws and tree ID and all that stuff. He loves doing he keeps a notebook. His name is Jaden Liggett, currently working with the water department. Okay. His title is safety technician, and all the safety stuff that he's learned has been through PowerCorp. We all contribute along the way, and he fine-tuned his skill set at the Reforestation Hub. I trust my trainee Jaden and even my new trainee Freddie Ortiz to lead a training on how to properly operate a saw, how to maintain a saw, how to sharpen and chain, ergonomics, how to place your body when you're doing pruning, following the niche pattern, all these things. How to buck the log when it's laying flat on the floor, right? Being mindful of the compression and tension forces, all these things, the trainees, they go through. Of course, how to handle a blade. The sawmill has taught us, just invaluable skills and on how to carry yourself around a machine like that. And we've made some mistakes, of course, but in comparison, very little, in my opinion. We've been careful to read the manual, watch a ton of videos, reach out to our team, the Baltimore team, Woodmiser as well. They did send a person to show us how to operate the machine for a day. All this stuff, the day-to-day, constantly using the chainsaws, using the machine, using the skid steer. We've had to repair the skid steer a bunch of times. So it is so many different areas and skills that are also transferable everywhere you go. This mechanical aptitude and how to use your hands to keep a machine working. If the machine breaks and we don't, all we know how to do is how to operate it when it's good, then it just sits there. What we wait for
service person
and in the industry, I'm not going to say that that you can't just hire somebody to come and fix it, but we all know that the better you are equipped with keeping the business going, the better you look for an employer. The more skills you come in with, right, the more likely that you'll be hired. So you become competitive in the labor industry when your application, when your resume and your actual experience shows that I know how to handle myself with this. You can trust me with the saw. I'm not going to hand it back to you when it's not starting and wait for you to hand me another one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a good sign for an employer, and more likely that they'll hire our grads. And that's the goal. So the hub, yes, this is, to me especially, that's like the perfect space where like, we get to actually practice these things live, hands-on, while we are also creating a product, diverting logs, lowering wood waste, right? Turning from a low value product into a higher value product by making boards out of something that, you know, would normally be turned into wood chip, which we need. We need wood chip, compost, and a mulch. We need all of that. But we can also use, like, you know, quality lumber coming out of these trees. And they carry a bigger story, which is also a big part of what we do. Is like we're trying to like actually create lumber that can also tell a story. Like some trees are very special to people, right? And if that tree comes down and we're actually able to make lumber out of that very special tree, that's also huge. And, you know, that's our goal, to be able to do that.
Yeah, and if I could just add quickly some climate science, if I understand it correctly, converting the log to lumber is higher on the food chain of sorts in terms of less carbon release than wood chips. Chips are going to tax our atmosphere as they decompose, whereas you're keeping that carbon in place the more lumber you're pulling out of that log.
Sure, yeah, you extend the life of that board. Yeah, most for sure is already breaking down at a faster rate. Wood chip as well. You make something with the wood and you hold on to it. You hold on to it. It stays.
How many women do you have in your program? Do you have a lot of women or not?
No, there are not too many women in the program. I don't have the stats right now as far as like PowerCorp overall. So I couldn't tell you exactly what the stats are with that. But yeah, usually the program has a majority Black male between the ages of 18 and 30. And then I think it's majority Black male. There's the smaller, there are plenty of women in the program. And that's been an interesting aspect of the work that we do, because we are in spaces that traditionally have not been welcoming to women. And, you know, we're trying to figure out what can we do, right? One area that's, in my opinion, has been kind of like interesting to point out is that the men in the industry have set up standards that they themselves often are not happy with. For example, in the restroom space, right? This is a big one for women that are working outdoors or working in spaces where, you know, like the trades, often a porta potty is, you know, enough. And a lot of the times these porta potties aren't like necessarily maintained in the best, cleanest.
Actually, I've never seen one that has been maintained.
And, you know, that shouldn't be an acceptable thing for anyone.
You're absolutely correct on that. You're absolutely correct on that.
I'm not saying a porta potty, well-maintained porta potty is perfectly fine, right? Could we do better? Of course. And we should be aiming for that. But I don't think there's an effort to try to improve those conditions. I think we've accepted it, and that's what it is. A lot of the women that come through the program, they do not want to use them. And so we have to make arrangements so that they have access to a proper restroom. And we do. Whenever that's the case, and we are able to. But, sometimes we also, like, this is where we are. This is what we have. This is where the industry is at this point. We should be working to make changes. But at this moment, you do have to figure out, if this is the industry that you want to get into, this is what it is right now. And you do have to figure out a way to be successful in it, while at the same time trying to push for a change in those areas that you're not satisfied with.
I will say that when I go to nurseries, the one nursery I went to, I couldn't believe they had the porta potties with beautiful trees around it, and the air freshener that goes off every so often, and the cleaner comes in every day and cleans the porta potty, and everything's sterilized, and it just blew me away. And it's because there's more women working in the nursery industry, and they want clean bathrooms. They do not want to go dirty, and I really think the standard has come up a lot in some industries, but not always woman industries. But I think that's something that you really need to think about. So I think it's great that you do what you do, and I wanted to find out if there were a lot of women in the programs, because there have been women moving into this direction. Of course, there's a lot of women arborists out there now more than ever. And yeah, they like nice accommodations.
Yeah, not just one. There's plenty of people. I myself, of course, I'm not trying to be in a filthy restroom if I can help it. And it goes back to our motto: is like we're trying to listen to the folks we work with. And
right, exactly.
What are the barriers that are keeping you from entering this field? Access to restrooms, one of them, for sure, right? And what other areas that are, historically, like kind of like become those barriers that the reason why women don't come to these spaces? Aside from the fact that because a lot of the times it's male dominated, and that alone can be a little intimidating.
Sure.
For women to step into, but who knows what other things are out there that are going to come up, and we listen, we engage, and we're trying to figure out what can we do about that.
That's great.
Sometimes, like I said, it's something that needs to change. But if you're really passionate about this is the standard that we're in right now. You got to keep fighting.
Absolutely. We're kind of getting to the end of our podcast here, and we really are thrilled that you were able to come on to our podcast and talk about PowerCorps. Yeah, and I want to find out before we go what your favorite tree is. And then I think Hal has some other questions for you.
I just want to ask you, did you have any final talking points?
So two things, right? We are, of course, this new thing, myself included. I grew up in PowerCorps when it comes to this arborist field. And my knowledge has grown with PowerCorps. There's any one of us, there's always so much more to learn, especially for me, there's so much more to learn. But the thing that I want to, I guess, just share with everyone is understand who we are, what we do at the Reforestation Hub. If you ask me, it's always going to be, this is a training space for young people to come here and receive next level training so that when they complete their 1 year term here, they are competitive in the job market. And employers should actually be hoping to have access to one of my grads, right? That's my goal. And, that's the level of engagement that I bring with the PowerCorps members at the Reforestation Hub. And then, of course, since we are new and we are exploring so many different things, the products that can come out of this hub at this moment, like we are so open to, anyone, woodworkers, experts in the field who are maybe interested in seeing what we can do with this, city urban lumber. It's a great time for us. So, there's so many different things that we're like only a concept, like, oh, we could do this, we could do that. This, for example, when we were making stakes, we're also having an order to make cans of 3.5 by 5.5 beams, right? That a buyer up north, they make pallets out of those cans. And in the process, there's a lot of off pieces that don't necessarily make the specifications. And we have a lot of lumber that is cut to a certain dimension that can be used for so many other things. And we just are trying to figure out, well, we don't want to dump this. We have a short little 1.5 by 1.5, 4 foot pieces of oak, ash, poplar, sycamore, you name it, any city tree that came to the yard. We have all these already short pieces of, offcuts that can be used for some. We're trying to find out what can we use with the sawdust? What can we do with the sawdust? It's like shavings when we put tips on the stakes. Is one of our neighbors is taking the shavings and a combination of sawdust and bringing it together so that they can use it for their planting needs, right?
Growing medium, yeah.
So we're also trying to study the sawdust to the next level, trying to see what else we can do in other areas. So it's a big old lab. It's what it is.
And sawdust is being used as biochar.
Yes, we're also looking into biochar. Actually, this new grant that we recently were a part of with Pittsburgh Parks and Rec, Jefferson University, includes an area where we'll be investing some resources to figure out how we can produce biochar.
No, that would be next level incredible. And I guess my final thought, you've given us such a terrific overview, is, when we talk about revitalizing and restoring the urban forests, not just in Philly, but in all our urban centers, in the podcast, even I've explored, seed shortages and sapling availability. But the labor piece is every bit as essential. Nothing's going to happen unless there's a trained workforce that can plant and grow and care for trees, along with thoughtful, environmentally sensitive processing of logs. So I feel like you really came full circle in telling our listeners about what you're up to. And now, surprise question, what is your favorite tree?
So I have a couple. I think my favorite tree, to be honest, is the Japanese maple. for some reason, when I look at it, and it's, I guess, a specific Japanese maple, because I know they can vary in their DNA.
I think there's only about, what, Eva, 10,000 different kinds?
Maybe.
But there's one right as you come into the horticulture center, right in front of the main axis area there. It looks like it's not even a tree. It looks like it's a blur of a painting of a Japanese maple. Very short and just, kind of like bonsai. And that's always been, very interesting for me to look at. But, there's so many, I'm a big old like tree nerd, whatever you want to call me. I'm constantly walking around in natural spaces, taking pictures. I use Picture This to try to identify the trees that I don't know.
Nice.
I'm always getting left behind by my family and like staring at the tree, taking pictures.
Been there.
Yeah. Yes, sir. So I would say, that was the first one that pops up. I would say it's one of my favorites.
Good call. Good call.
Thank you so much for being on our podcast and sharing your knowledge and your journey, because I think other people hearing your journey will realize that sometimes it takes a little longer to get where you want to land, and you'll have a lot more skill sets in hand.
Yeah, yes, I agree. I guess in hindsight, it all kind of worked out.
Yeah, it's almost like you bring a philosophy of work, the art of working with your hands and the art of connecting your hands to your brain. That very comprehensive, all-encompassing approach to doing stuff. And so it's been great. And yeah, I echo what Eva just said. We really thank you for joining us.
A real people person.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
And I will see you at the ORC. Thanks for sharing the abbreviation. It's a lot easier to see.
ORC, yeah. Sounds good. Yep. Come back and get some wood. Yeah.
Sounds good, Carlos. Have a great
care.
weekend as well.
Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The Plant a Trillion Trees podcast is edited by Andromedan Recordings in Hollywood, California.